Hi, welcome back to Phototechnic Educators. I'm Andi Sanders, and today we're going to be talking about some of the terms that we showed you last session as to what these terminologies mean and help to make you understand just a little bit better how to run your camera. The first thing that I want to re-emphasize to you is that when you get a new camera, please take the manual. Go sit down on your couch with the camera and the manual, take a couple evenings and start reading through your manual and studying what is in that manual. I know a lot of times we're in a hurried world and we don't like to take time to do any of that, but this is one instance where it's very important to definitely read through your manual. Maybe you can get in a car and drive the car without reading all the things in the owner's and operator's manual, but in a camera it's very important because these cameras today are so sophisticated that there's just a ton of information and a ton of things that they can do, and if you don't take time to read it, you'll never know what's on the camera. The first thing that we want to talk about today is memory cards. Remember back in the days when you had a roll of film and you put a film in the camera and then you sent it off to get processed? Well, that's what this stuff is. This is the new film of the digital era. And there, if you'll notice, there's two different types of cards here. These are called memory cards. This one happens to be a compact flash card or a CF card. You'll find this card in more professional type cameras, higher end cameras. And this is an SD card or a secure digital card. A lot smaller, more compact. And you'll find these in a lot of your point and shoots, a little more amateur style cameras. We're even going though with these into the professional range. Our video cameras hold these. And isn't it amazing that this little card can carry so much information, more than a roll of film ever thought of doing back in the era of the film days. One thing I want to comment on this SD card, on the secure digital card, is if you'll notice there's a little lock button on here, and maybe we can zoom in on this and show what that is, but there's a little button here, and what that is a lock. If this gets slid to one side or the other, like that, it will lock, and when you put it in your camera, a screen display will come up and say card locked. Speaking from experience, I got real panicky because I didn't know about this, and when it came up card locked, and oh no, what do I do? I have no clue as to what to do. I got my manual out and read, and here I found that just slides to the middle and unlocks it, and then we're good to go, and it'll take the picture. So it's a preventative thing that they put in the secure digital cards to keep it from getting people exposing the card and they don't want to. So, two different sizes of cards. Now, I don't know if we can show this on the camera, but if you look at these two, one says 1 gigabyte and the other one says 4 gigabytes. Now, a byte is a unit of measure that is used in the digital world to measure units of images and that. So, the more bytes, the bigger the card is, the more information that it'll hold. The point that I'm trying to make here is both of these styles of cards come in several different sizes. You can get 1 megabyte or gigabyte, you can get a 2 gig card, a 4 gig card. They're up to 16 and 32 gigs, even 64 gig cards. The more information that these cards will hold, the more, of course, it costs you to buy. And my theory is this. I don't want the 64 gigabyte card to put in my camera, because if something goes wrong with the camera, especially on a professional basis, then you've lost the whole thing. So what we try to do in our studio, and even for our own personal pleasure, is to use a little bit smaller, maybe 4 gigabyte cards, and then that way if something goes wrong, we haven't lost all the efforts and all the work that we've done up to that point. And these can fail, they can be recovered. There are recovery systems that are out there that can take care of that. So just keep that in mind. Now, the other thing with these cards, when you're going out to buy a card, because you're going to have, quote, film for your camera, is the thing that you want to look at is, are they HD, are they high capacity? There's a lot of different things. there's speeds. They'll maybe say ultra 1, 2, or 3 or extreme. And you need to read on the package as to how fast these will download, the download speeds, or the salesperson can help you out on that. So please ask and say, this is how I'm going to be using this camera and the film. What will I need to do? What kind of card is the best memory card for me to use on this? So just keep that in mind and search. There's a lot of different kinds as far as high density, the whole bit. Now, the other thing that I want to tell you when you're using this is probably most of you know in the digital world, we need to back up. If something happens to this card, what are we going to do? We've got our images loaded on our computer. And you've heard so many times on a computer, it's not a matter of if the hard drive is going to go down and crash, but when. So that leads us to the situation of, hey, we probably better have some form of backup. In the film days, we had a negative. But if the negative got destroyed, we were out of luck. So the digital world really gives us the opportunity to come in and secure our images a little bit better. Whether you have an external hard drive that you download images onto that also, you can set it to automatically download. Just ask a computer person or somebody that's intelligent in that area. They will know what to do to get an external hard drive that you can download into. And so that's one form. There's also things like Carbonite and what we call in the cloud. And I know that's a kind of a strange concept to think about, but think about a cloud. It's just floating out there somewhere. And there are services that you can purchase that will take your downloads of your images, and it has it in the cloud. They put them at different locations so that they are secure too. So if anything happens, you can download those images back from the cloud, back from your hard drive, external hard drive or whatever. The other form of doing this is to burn a CD or a DVD. That's another form of backup. So I can't stress it enough to back up your images, because trust me, I've had a lot of my really good portfolio images lost last year when one of my computers crashed. And I was guilty. I didn't have all of them backed up. The next thing that I'd like to talk about today is file format. When you bring your camera home, there's a lot of things that you're going to have to do in setting it up to be ready to take a picture. But one of the main things is the file format. If you have a point and shoot type camera or more of an amateur type camera, along the bottom of the screen, when you are toggling through the menu, you'll see like L, and then it'll probably have an F and an S for superfine. That's the resolution. And what the resolution is how many pixels per square inch are going to be in that image. Now, there's different instances where you need to use different file sizes. And the camera ranges anywhere from like a 72 DPI or pixel per inch clear up to like 4,000 pixels per inch. So it's up to you to decide which you want. The more pixels per inch, the larger you can enlarge that image, the more information that is captured for that image, and the bigger you can make it. As it goes smaller in the DPI or the pixels per inch, then the smaller the image, you can't enlarge it. If you try to enlarge it bigger, it falls apart. In other words, there gets to be, let me see if I can show you on the dry erase board. If you have a bunch of dots like this, and there's space between them, if you have a lot of these, it's not going to be a problem. I'm kind of drawing this a little sloppy, but I think you'll get the idea of what I'm talking about. Lots of them in there. But let's say, so that would be your larger format. Now, let's start taking out some of these. And you notice there gets to be spaces in between. And when that's enlarged, when we increase that size, then there's going to be more and more spaces. So it's going to be like this, and there's a lot of area where there's information missing. You can see all this area in here has information missing. This is where the information is. So as you enlarge that image, that's what we call pixelating, and it'll get real grainy looking and have a lot of what we call digital noise. So it isn't clear, it's soft looking, and it isn't what you possibly want. So, like I say, there's a lot of different ways that you can use this resolution. So let's give you some examples, first of all. I have a lot of people, like I said, that come to me and want an enlargement made, and they can't because the camera is set, it defaults to 72 pixels per inch. And that is just not enough to make an enlargement. Maybe enough for a picture this size or wallet. The 72 DPI is what we use for Facebook, for sending on the web, anything over the internet, because it's a very small file, transfers fast, and on the computer screen that's all you need, but it's not good for printing. When you have a 72 DPI, you can get a ton of pictures on a little SD card. I mean, maybe 1,000 pictures on it. And you can take pictures forever and never have to change the card. But you can't enlarge those pictures past a wallet size. So the bigger the files that you're going to take, the less that you can put on a card. Keep that in mind. My suggestion is buy more cards. They're pretty inexpensive. Now, the next thing that we want to talk about is the different file formats. We've kind of covered resolution. So make sure, I can't emphasize this enough, make sure you check what your resolution is, because more than likely you do not want it set at 72. Get it up there into it doesn't have to be the highest, but maybe the middle range somewhere. Depends on how you're going to use it. Now, let's take a look at the different file formats that are offered. And you'll notice this on the camera, that you can set this. The first one is called RAW. And a RAW file is equivalent, let's equate it to this sheet of paper. It's like this sheet of paper. It's flat, it takes a ton of information, there's no creases, there's no folds, there's no bends, it's pure information. It's the most that you can possibly get for the image. The next one that you'll see in Adobe Photoshop is PSD. I like to save all my images after they're converted, and we'll talk about conversion here in a minute, but I like to save them to PSD files. That's a Photoshop document file. And that has a lot of information that does not get corrupted or hurt. So let's call this a PSD file. We make one fold in that paper, and now we have a PSD file. Every time you make a fold in the paper, you're going to have some degradation of files. In other words, you're going to lose some information along that fold line. It's like getting yourself cut, just like an owie on my hand. I get a cut. That will never, ever be the same. I lost part of my skin here when I got cut. So it will never quite be the same. So if you don't want to have any files getting information lost, then that's why we do the RAW. But PSD is a good form. The next one that you will hear about is TIFF. A TIFF file is very similar to a PSD file. In a TIFF, you'll see in the cameras, it will say TIFF, and you can set it to record in a TIFF format. Now, a TIFF is equivalent to this. If I fold the paper one more time, I now have, and I open this up, I now have a TIFF file. Not a lot of things lost, not a lot of information lost along these fold lines. There's only 2 fold lines. Because every time you open and close a file, this is what you're doing. You're opening and you're closing along those lines. And so information gets lost in those fold lines. The final one that most of you are going to be the most familiar with is called a JPEG file. And you've seen JPEG written because that seems to be the common thing anymore for people to use. A JPEG file, however, is a compressed file. It takes information and it squeezes it down into a little itty-bitty ball, and it holds that information. But every time you open up that information and close it and open and close it, you lose some. This is the best example I can figure out to show you, and I think it really will make it seem come to light in your mind on this. If I take this paper now and I just crumple it up, and then I'm going, this is my JPEG file. It's compressed, correct? It's small compared to what I had. Let's open that file back up again. I think this is kind of neat. We open it up. Now, we still have our information, and it's pretty good. If we smooth it out, it's pretty good. But you'll notice there's a lot of fold lines in there. Now we're going to close that file again. And then we're going to open it up again. And then we're going to close it again and open it up again. And look what starts happening to that file. We're losing information right and left because it's just so many fold lines. Every line that I fold on, I'm losing some information. And you notice that shape doesn't look at all like when I started out. So keep this in mind when you're shooting JPEG. You can't do as much with JPEG. Let's go back just real quickly, and in some future lessons we're going to be talking more and more about this in detail, but just to give you a brief little glimpse of what is to come and to whet your appetite. When we're shooting in Camera Raw, remember the biggest file that you can have, you can go into Adobe Bridge, and in Photoshop you can adjust the white, not the white balance, but you can adjust color, you can adjust exposure, you can adjust fill light, contrast, brightness, darkness, color saturation. You can do a ton of things in Camera Raw, but you can't do it with the JPEG as much. A little bit, but not anything like you can. So you can overcome a lot of the ills. However, when you do have Camera Raw, you do have to convert those files into a file that your computer can read, because it can't read just the Camera Raw as it is. There's no way you can work with that. It's a way of storage. So these are things that you need to, if you need to delve into a little deeper and read more about, you're going to find plenty of information on that. We've talked about all the different formats, the JPEG, the TIFF, the RAW, the PSD, that you can set your camera at. Now, there's one other thing that I really can't emphasize enough to you people today, and that is formatting your camera. If you go into the menu of your camera, and this is for any camera, it doesn't matter what kind it is, you'll find a file that says Format. And it is very important to click on that, and then it'll say, do you want to format? And you say either yes or no. Now, if you have images on that card, on that SD or that CF card, when you say yes, it will erase all those images. So it's just like me erasing on the blackboard. If I put a squiggle on here and I want to format, this is my camera and I want to format, and I hit yes, boom, it's gone. So keep in mind that you need to have everything downloaded and backed up before you format that card. But the thing that most people don't realize and understand, it's extremely important on these cards to format them in the camera and not delete the images in your computer. I can't say this enough. I'll say it again. Format and delete the images on these cards in the camera, nowhere else. Because what happens if you use the computer to delete those and format these disks, it will eventually destroy the disk, and you'll get much longer life out of these CF cards and SD cards if you do it in the camera. So be sure you keep that in mind. And it'll, when you go back on the screen on the menu, it'll say Format, and that's what you're looking for. And what that is deleting the images off of there. Now, when you get a new card, you just have it brand new. You've gone to the store and bought a new card. You put it in your camera. It's very necessary to format this card. And what that format is doing is it's making little sections and boxes to tell you where the information needs to go. So it's setting the grid up to, well, I guess to separate images and things like that. So that's the best way I can say it. It presets the card. It's very necessary to do that. That's one of the first things that you need to do.